In a fictional political thriller timeline, the story began breaking just before dawn, when a single leaked memo started circulating among journalists who normally never shared sources. By sunrise, the words were everywhere, whispered first and then shouted across social media feeds. Tim Walz had resigned as governor, and the reason behind it was far more explosive than anyone expected. What stunned people wasn't just the resignation itself. Governors stepped down for health reasons, scandals, or political pressure. What stopped everyone cold was the claim attached to it that Walz had privately admitted he knew about a long-running scheme involving taxpayer money and had failed to stop it. The shock came in layers. According to this fictional account, the chain reaction started weeks earlier with a quiet state audit. It wasn't supposed to be controversial. Routine review, standard process. But buried deep in budget transfers and subcontractor reports, auditors began noticing patterns that didn't make sense. Repeated payments, inflated service claims, nonprofits receiving public funds without clear deliverables. At first, it looked like sloppy oversight. Then the names kept repeating. The funds, according to internal reviewers in this imagined scenario, were flowing through a network of community-linked organizations that had been flagged before but never fully investigated. Each time concerns surfaced, they were deferred, delayed, or quietly dismissed. The explanation was always the same: politically sensitive, socially delicate, better handled later. Later never came. As auditors escalated the issue, the paper trail widened. Emails surfaced, meeting notes, budget briefings. And that's when Walz's name appeared. Not as an architect, not as a participant, but as someone who had been warned. Multiple times. In closed-door budget meetings, advisors had allegedly raised concerns about misuse of public funds. The language was cautious but clear. There were risks. There were irregularities. There were signs that taxpayer money was being siphoned through inflated contracts and ghost services. In this fictional narrative, Walz didn't deny hearing the warnings. He just didn't act. The reason, according to sources familiar with the internal fallout, wasn't personal gain. It was political calculation. Addressing the issue would have triggered backlash, accusations of targeting a specific community, and an election year firestorm. So the problem was shelved, again and again, until the audit forced it back into the light. The moment everything collapsed came during a closed federal state review session. No cameras, no reporters. Just officials, legal counsel, and documents spread across a long table. When confronted with the compiled evidence and asked directly whether he had prior knowledge, Walz paused and then answered honestly, yes. That single word, in this imagined account, changed everything. The admission wasn't public at first, but once it was documented, it became impossible to contain. Federal officials made it clear that failure to intervene, once aware, crossed from political judgment into potential liability. Not criminal charges, at least not yet, but a breach of public trust severe enough to make continued leadership untenable. Within 48 hours, pressure mounted quietly but relentlessly. Party leaders called. Donors went silent. Legal teams advised that staying in office would only magnify the fallout. And behind closed doors, Walz was told what would soon become inevitable: resign or be removed. The resignation announcement came in a short, carefully worded statement. No dramatic speech. No press conference questions. Just a confirmation that he was stepping down in the best interest of the state. The public explanation avoided specifics, but the leak had already outrun the truth. By midday, the confession narrative exploded. Commentators argued over intent versus responsibility. Supporters insisted he had been trapped by political realities. Critics accused him of valuing optics over accountability. Taxpayers were furious, not just about the alleged theft, but about the silence that allowed it to continue. Protests formed outside the state capitol. Some demanded investigations into every official connected to the funding pipeline. Others demanded arrests. Others demanded reforms so sweeping that no future administration could bury similar warnings again. In this fictional timeline, Walz retreated from public view entirely. No interviews, no rebuttals, no social media statements. The silence only deepened speculation. Had he known more than he admitted? Were there others who had stayed quiet alongside him? Behind the scenes, investigations expanded. Subpoenas followed the money. Contracts were frozen. Organizations once protected by political caution suddenly found themselves exposed to scrutiny they had never faced before. The shield of sensitivity was gone, and the damage went far beyond one resignation. Trust in government cracked visibly. Every budget line was questioned. Every official statement was doubted. The story became a warning, not about one man, but about what happens when leaders choose comfort over confrontation. In this imagined world, the most haunting part wasn't the alleged theft itself. It was the idea that the truth had been known, acknowledged, and still allowed to continue. Because once a leader admits they knew and did nothing, the question stops being who stole. It becomes who stayed silent and why.